I've got some Dahlia cuttings in different stages of development, and I thought we'd have a look at them and see what they should be doing at what stage, and how you recognise when the right thing is happening and how you recognise when things are going wrong. So I've got 5 Dahlia cuttings here, and they've all been taken at different times. So let's have a look at each of them and see what's happening. So let's have a look at each one and see what's happening. This cutting is 6 days old. Variety is Snowflake. The next one is Nuidet and is 9 days old. These are both currently protected in a polythene bag to maintain moisture. We'll come back to that in a moment. This next one is 18 days old. Arabian Night. That's Arabian Night. And the next one is 30 days old, so this is 1 month after taking the cutting. And the last one we've got here is 56 days old. It's still in the same pot, 56 days after the cutting was taken. So let's now take a close look at the cutting that was taken only 6 days ago. Now we wouldn't expect any rooting to have occurred after 6 days, it's too early, and therefore this cutting is exactly the same as it was when it was put into the pot 6 days ago. And what we can say is that it's still green, still looks healthy, there's still a strength in the leaves, in other words the leaves are not wilting, and we can say that after 6 days this is doing everything it should be doing. It's still healthy and there's no signs of wilting, and therefore we've got the moisture control of this plant correct. The next one is 9 days old, and there is something to see here, because at 9 days there's still a little chance of any functional roots being put out, and therefore this plant still requires protection from drying out, and hence it's still in a plastic bag. But if we look closely, we'll see that this leaf on the right here is actually wilting. So this plant is showing signs of distress. I took it out of the plastic bag about an hour ago, and during that time this obvious wilting has got worse. So really this just shows that at this stage of the proceedings you really should have your cuttings either in a plastic bag or if you have other facility for maintaining moisture in the air, such as a mister, then that's really great. But these cuttings will have a little chance of survival if you just put them into soil and then leave them to it in a dry atmosphere. They will wilt and they will die. Okay, so the next one is 18 days old, and at this stage we would hope that there's some functional roots, and you will notice a change at this stage if everything is right and there are functional roots beginning. Then this area here will show some growth. Just turn that pencil round, and in fact we can see, look very carefully in there, that there's some new leaves starting here. You have to take my word for it, they were not there when the cutting was placed in. So this cutting is healthy, it's functional, and it's already beginning to put roots out, and hence once the roots come, the growth is stimulated in the growing tip of the plant. And now let's look at the next one. So this is 30 days old, and by which time roots should certainly be present and functional after 30 days, all being well. And let's check on that now by having a look and see the actual roots present in the pot. So we can have a look at this Dahlia cutting and see how much root development there's been. Now, don't try this at home, but I'm just going to gently remove this from the pot. As little disturbance as possible. Have a look at the roots, and you can see there's a lot of nice healthy looking roots there. This is after 30 days, remember, so that's a really good root system. It's not actually pot bound, it's not getting to the stage where there's the roots are looking cramped, but it's not far off it. So I've been very gentle, and that will have done the cutting no harm. Okay. So now we'll look at the last cutting, which is 56 days old, so it's been a long time in this pot. And in fact, we can see a sign of dis-ease, a sign of trouble, in as much as, if the camera can get this, but there's some lightening of the, and some mottling even on that leaf. So we compare with this one, you can see the leaves and this one. The leaves are much darker, or quite a lot darker anyway. And this one is paler. And I think what's going on here, putting two and two together, is that because the cutting is 56 days old, 2 months old, and still in the same pot, I'm imagining that the roots are not providing enough nutrition here because the roots are crowded out. That's my impression without looking at them. So we'll now, like we did with the other plant, we'll have a look at the roots and see what they're looking like. Okay, so let's have a look. I'm using horticultural grit here as a mulch to protect the surface, prevent drying out of the medium. This is mixed peppermint, so let's have a look at the root system. Okay. So you can see that it's a pretty tight space in there for all those roots. And you could say with confidence that this plant is actually pot bound. Not as bad as I thought it might be, but you can see the way that the roots here have reached the bottom, they've got nowhere to go, and have started to wrap around themselves. After another week, it'll be very much more evident. This wrapping around of the lower root system is typical of a plant that's pot bound. So the correct thing to do with this guy is to put it into a larger pot. Okay, so to recap, what we've seen this afternoon are 5 dahlia cuttings at different stages in development. We've seen what they should look like at this stage, how to recognise when good things are happening, such as when the roots are starting to develop. And also we've seen a couple of problems which are typical of dahlia cuttings. So this guy, 6 days old, is happy in as much as it's not wilting, the leaves are still green, and there's no signs of growth because there will be no roots at this stage. With this one at 9 days, it's still in a plastic bag, and we've noticed that there's wilting of one of the leaves there, so that plant is in some distress, not taking enough water in, and I'm simply going to put the plastic bag back on and keep an eye on it and make sure that all is well. If we lift the pot, you can see that it's nice and heavy, so we know that there's enough water in that pot, and it's not simply drying out due to non-watering. You'll find if you put a plastic bag on your tubers that they almost never need water until the plastic bag comes off, and that usually occurs at about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And this next one, which is 18 days old, is actually already out of its plastic bag. I'm going to keep a very close eye on that, because although there are signs of root formation because we've got new growth, it's still very early on, and there's a risk that that plant could become dehydrated because the leaves are open and we're not protecting its atmosphere around the leaves at all. And the next one at 30 days old is a nice healthy cutting, which we had a look at the roots and we can see that they're well developed, and we're happy with that plant. Before too long it's going to outgrow its pot and will need to be potted on. And the last one we looked at is 56 days old and is paling up, so that this plant is in distress. There's paling because there's not enough nutrition going into that plant through its root system. And we've had a look at the roots and we've found that they are too well developed for the space they're in. So the reason for the distress is that the plant is pot bound. So we're going to very, very quickly pot that on into a new pot. Okay, so I hope you found that useful, and thank you very much indeed for watching and listening, and hopefully I'll see you again for the next video. Bye bye for now.